Hi, it's Simon from Paint Your Travels, and one of the questions we're often asked on our trips is how to simplify a scene using perspective. What are the mysteries of perspective and how can we make them work for us? In this video I'm going to show you exactly how I do the scene behind us and simplify it for your next travelling trip. Right, into the studio. So let's start drawing. What I'll often do is a little thumbnail sketch, a little scribble to see how the kind of composition looks. But what I recommend you all do is initially just to block in the main shapes. Sometimes you can be overwhelmed with the detail. So by putting in a couple of key shapes until you're happy with the proportions, that's a good point to get to, and then you can start adding the detail. For example, the walls, the roofs, the gap between the buildings, that's important, and also the height of the tower. Anyway, I'm unusually drawing with a straight edge. I often encourage people to draw freehand, but I think in this case we'll allow it. There's a lot of straight lines, but don't become completely slavish with your use of a straight edge. Just get a few of the main lines in, and then you can start adding the details in afterwards. So yeah, just slowly building up the scene, the sides of the buildings, just like a sort of jigsaw puzzle really. It's always good to have an idea of how high that sort of spire is as well, because you don't want to start your drawing and then realise you haven't got enough room to put the tower in. But this is all coming together, so yeah, just a little rough point where that's going to be. Drop that shape down, and then a kind of suggestion of what's going on behind there. You can just, it's not, that's the church tower in the middle in the left hand side, and that's one of the towers from our chateau on the right. All coming together. Bit of fine pencil rubber work. I've got a technical pencil here. I kind of like those fixed point leads. These are a 2B, which works well. I think it gives quite a soft line without getting too heavy. I did talk about sort of walking you through the kind of perspective of the scene. Actually, it's quite a complicated scene. As you can see, there's a lot of different angles. The buildings are all in different places, different shapes, so vanishing here, there, and everywhere. And it's also on a downhill stretch. So I think the best thing, this is where I put the picture on the right hand side here, so you can see how I'm putting this together. So having got the main shapes in, what I'm doing is putting the windows initially, just a hint of some tile work. I mean, I think what I'll probably do is come along later and add more line work. Yes, you can almost start putting the colour on now, but in this case I thought what I'll do, I will do quite a sort of finished drawing and then just add washes of colour in the style of Stephanie Bauer. She'll crop up again, and I'll give you a link to her work. She's an architect and does some lovely architectural illustration, and it was her. In fact, I've always steered away from using a straight edge where possible, except, and people know it, the horizon line in a kind of either a lake or a sea situation. I do like a straight horizon line, but in this case I'm just piecing together some various angles. It just speeds things up a little bit as well. So I think the key thing in this scene is also obviously the gap down there through the houses, but also the shadows on the floor. We'll go into that a bit later on. At this stage I'm just kind of sketching in some loose kind of window and door shapes, which we can come back and add detail to later on. That's roughly where the eye level or horizon line would be. It's like where the lines are horizontal. So above that line, they'll be sloping down, and below the line, you'll see them sloping up. probably a slight oversimplification, but I'll be doing more tutorials in the near future, working and explaining a little bit more of the intricacies of perspective. Okay, some hint of some balconies and doors. Details around the door frame and windows. But you can see now how the picture is coming together. Having done those initial shapes, now I'm going in with the details, and soon be able to start putting some colour on. I did like this scene. This is in our village, but at a certain time of day you get a lovely contrast. The sun's just coming around and lighting that left-hand facades, but with some interesting striking shadows, so we can capture that feel. More to the roof tiles. I mean, I'll happily put those in. I will be putting those in later on as well. I mean, actually, there's a lot of cabling, overhead cabling in this picture. I tend to put a couple of things in. You can always add more later on, but it's once you've washed the colour, wash some watercolour over a pencil line, you're not really going to be able to get that line out again. So I think here I'll just put maybe 1 or 2 lines in, leading down to this kind of bracket on the wall. But that should do it, I think. I'll come back and add more later on. Anyway, I think it's time to start mixing some colours. These are the brushes I use, basically a small, medium and large travel brush. And a quick flash there of my Rotring technical pencil with, that's actually a 0.7 lead and a 2B lead. So, I'll put the picture up on the left hand side and I'm going to wash in some simple background sky. That's a cerulean blue. I didn't wet the paper, but maybe I should have done. But I'm just going to kind of flood this on. I normally have the page tilted a little bit, which helps the colour flow down the page. But this time it's actually flat on the desk. But as you can see, just painting that in. And the clean, damp brush, I just kind of soften the edges. Might even put a few clouds in. At this point, I'll say this is a sketch pad I'm working in, one of the ones we use on our trips. This is 300 gram paper, which is and rough, and it's very good for this kind of quick watercolor sketch. But I do emphasize that if you're putting a nice watercolor paint together, if you can, I would say use 420 gram paper, because the quality of the paper does help. You'll find with this painting is that the colour will fade into the paper very, very quickly, and you need to kind of rework it. You'll see I'll be doing the shadows a number of times. But back to what we're doing now. I am just washing in some a little mix of Naples yellow, a little bit of yellow ochre, pretty well over all the buildings. I'll come back in with the details later on, the stronger colours. This one's slightly richer brown. I mean, you can add stronger colours while it's still damp. You get a nice kind of texture in the facade. Okay, time some magic shadow colour. This is also from Stephanie Bauer. Just heard about this last week. I only swear by Payne's Grey. I hear some people spit on the floor. This magic shadow is a mixture of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and then a touch of alizarin crimson to give it that lovely kind of richness. It just kind of works well. It just gives a little bit of life to the shadow colour. So what I'll often do is try it out on a little scrap piece of paper first. Going to add a little bit more red, a bit more of the alizarin crimson, and then you get that kind of, you can see how it's subtly changing. I think that's a nice point. Yes, I probably need to have mixed up a little more than this, but knowing it's that colour combination, I can come back and match it up again. So some of the shadow mix, and then just adding a little hint of a kind of warmer glow of yellow ochre down the bottom. Always good to have a little scrap of paper just to kind of try your colours out rather than going straight onto the picture. So in this case, at this point I'm actually just kind of blocking some colours in. It's almost like I'm suggesting where the tones are, and as you'll see, I'll come back and strengthen these up later on. Just a hint of burnt sienna and yellow ochre for the roofs. Some initial darker shadow tones. And just bringing a little differentiation between the facades. The watercolour, it's always best to, I find, to kind of start quite lightly, concentrating on where the lights and tones are, because you can always come back and strengthen it up. There's nothing worse than going on too strongly too soon, because it's difficult to lighten an area once you've got it in dark. Okay, it just begins to darken that facade in the distance. It's a good idea just to kind of be aware of the tonal values in there. That distant wall is probably the darkest in the little street scene, because you can see how there on the left hand side, that's tonally lighter. Certainly on the left hand side, that kind of right sort of pale yellow wall is, and then on the right hand side it's also a little bit lighter than that distant grey wall. You have to bear that in mind as you're adding and strengthening the colours. In fact, now I'm just going to take a little bit of this colour away while it's still damp. Slowly building up the light and shade on the church tower. If you kind of squint at the picture, you can see really how much darker the tower is than the sky. This is what you kind of got to eventually head for. Now just adding some soft shadow into the window recesses. At this stage I'm just using the largest brush, which I think is around about a size 12. I think it's a 12/8 and a 4. It's just a little cheap series, I must confess, from somewhere online. But they work very well. And you'll be pleased to know that if you come on one of our trips, one of our retreats, you will get a sketchbook throughout the trip for you to take away, and also a set of these travel brushes, which I think are really useful. I love them. Okay, time for some more shadow, a little bit of ultramarine blue, some burnt sienna, and alizarin crimson. Get that scrap paper out again, just to kind of compare where we were. I think that's getting close. Okay, yeah, let's put some strong shadows in. That's right down there, down by that kind of arched doorway. Then there's a gap, make sure you have the gap. Then there's another kind of strong cast shadow between the buildings, and then another gap before the shadow here in the foreground. Vital, vital. So now you see it's beginning to take a little shape. I might just drop a little warm colour into this foreground just to give it a little bit more texture, which will blend in nicely as it's all still damp. But I'm probably going to come back again. Like I said, I think a higher quality paper would hold that dark better than this, the sketchpad, but it's good for what it does. Okay, got a nice crisp edge on the shadow on the building, and it just kind of softens down on the left hand side. Quite angular shadow on the walls down here as well. Right, and there's some strong shadow under the guttering. And now that, yeah, that initial layer is dry, I can start adding stronger tones on all over. Keep sort of constantly referring back to your reference picture, your scene, to see that kind of contrast, where the contrast is, where the light areas are. I confess this would be a difficult scene to paint literally on plein air. So I've definitely been won over by the iPhone, the smartphone framed photographs and so on to work from. Even if you are working in a kind of on plein air situation, I find it's a good idea to take a couple of photographs to experiment with the composition. You also kind of capture the shadow at a certain point. I mean, weather is pretty steady here, so the scene would probably stay lit like this throughout the duration of your painting. But you never can tell. You could be in a situation where it's going to cloud over, so that early reference photograph would be great to refer back to, especially if that was when the light was just perfect. Adding a little bit of a shadow to the walls here. Into the yellow on the balustrade. I mean, the planting will come last of all, but it will just add a little life to the scene. The key thing is at the end of kind of each stage, let it dry out, and then you can go back in there with stronger light and shade. A little bit of Payne's grey coming into use. This is great for the darker windows in the scene. I mean, do feel free at any point to drop a question into the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So as you can see, we've had the initial washes of adding some tone to the windows, for example, here, and now I'm going back in with a stronger tone to try and match it up with the picture there on the left hand side. Because it really is a very bright sunny morning, and it's going to give you lovely deep shadows with a sharp edge. Okay, dry again. Now time to strengthen that shadow once again. Like I said, keep it as a wash, as a kind of glaze, if you like. We don't want to lose all the detail behind it. Don't just paint it on solidly. But each kind of layer just enhances that. They are keeping that shadow nice and sharp in the foreground, and it can wash out as it comes nearer. Okay, that's better. Now you can see if you go into the picture, you can see the contrast is beginning to match the original picture. So bear in mind the sun is coming from the right hand side, so the shadows are going to be stronger on the left. Okay, right, that's beginning to take shape. I think what we could do now is, now this is dry again, I'm going to just go back in with my 2B pencil and just add some details. Once again, the straight edge is handy for drain pipes and so on, but I'm doing my best to keep a little bit of freehand work as well. What you'll find is if you do quite a technical drawing, should we say, an architectural drawing with straight edges, but then paint it freehand, it just softens it up. I mean, I like where the lines shine through, but it does help soften it once you start painting it. I'm guessing I could have done a little bit more detailed work in the initial pencil stage, but once you've got a few layers of paint on, those lines do fade in a bit, so I'm just enhancing those just to add the drama, the detail back to the picture. In this particular case, this style, I prefer pencil rather than pen. I very rarely use a black felt pen because I have been known to often use a biro or a ballpoint pen in the initial sketch, but that's more of a kind of journal style. You'll be able to see more of that kind of example of that in some of our other playlists here on YouTube. Okay, yeah, let's get a few more of these verticals in. I mean, in this case, I've actually left the sketch pad in one position. I will often just rotate it around and to be able to draw at an easier angle, especially when you've got a little perspective sketches to be done, some lines and so on. But I'm doing my best to work in the same position. Just adding some sort of looser pencil work for the details around the door and window, the little wrought-iron balustrades. I think it works well in this style because if you try and paint these lines in, it can all go a little bit clumsy. It's best to do it like this, I think. Okay, so where's the cabling going? Let's have a little street light in. We do have several weeks a year based in our village of Puzol, and really, I mean, it's a very paintable little village. Every corner, every street, there's certainly a lot of variety, a lot of character. Okay, yeah, let's try a few more cables. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to put them all in, but I just want to get the hint of, just take a deep breath and sweep a line down there. Okay. Purists look away. I'm now going to put some white gouache into action. White gouache being opaque. And just to break up some of this dark area with a little bit of light. And if it's too strong, you can just run your finger across it just to soften it back a little bit. We've got some lines in the paving area. It's just nice to add some lights to the edge of the windows. Just little specks and highlights and sunlight. Sort of lines here down on the other shadow and the one across here. That's right. Maybe some parking around the window frames. You may find you need to go back a couple of times if you're painting white in, because it does tend to kind of soften back into the page, and there it is. That's exactly what it's doing. The more layers of white you put on top, the more fixed or permanent it becomes. Some parking lines. The sun catching those little window frames and ledges. Maybe something on this tower as well. I like using white like this. It just brings a few little spots of light and sparkle here and there. Let me know what you think, whether you're a purist, a non-white paint user, or you're happy to use all the mediums available. Oops. As you can see, it just kind of fades into the tone below. So you just need to freshen it up now and again. All right, yes, let's put these little potted plants in on the ramp there, just to add a little bit of something to it. It's all quite dark, so I've just got a sort of dark mix of hooker's green and sap green. Slightly smaller brush now as well, just to just break into the kind of sunlit areas. Maybe one down the bottom as well. So it just softens the corner. Great. And why not? A little bird or two. I always forget. Just some line work here and there just to finish off. Some of the white needs just enhancing again. You can go on and on doing this. But I think that looks pretty good now. There is a point, and I often get to blow a whistle and get people to put their brushes down because you can go on and on and on. But usually just adding a few little white highlights here and there that's just going to finish things off. Okay, great. I think that's it. So now gingerly take your tape off around the edge. I like putting a tape frame around it because it gives you like a nice crisp edge when you're finished. Just got to be careful to put it away from your actual painted area, because there is a danger it'll peel the picture off. But no, I think that's nice. I'm just going to put a couple more little lines in. But cool, and I hope you enjoyed that. And like I said, please put any questions in down below and I'll do my best to answer the question. And we'll be doing something else soon. So there we are, finished picture. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and got a few tips from it. And why not come and join us on one of our painting holidays? Check out the website, details below. In the meantime, I look forward to catching you in the next video. Bye for now.